The afternoon had started deceptively calm, the sunlight spilling lazily through our living room windows, painting warm streaks across the hardwood floor. I was sitting in my usual chair, absently scrolling through my messages when she appeared, carrying an envelope that immediately drew my attention. There was a subtle spring in her step, a sly smile playing across her lips, and a glint in her eyes that suggested she believed she was about to win. She placed the envelope carefully on the table, letting it rest with deliberate weight as though it were a weapon, and leaned back, folding her arms with casual confidence. "This is simple," she said, her tone smooth, almost playful. "Accept my male friend into our lives, or it's over." The words hung in the air like poison, and for a moment, I felt the cold sting of disbelief, the sharp pang of betrayal. But I didn't react. I let her confidence settle around her, a fragile shield about to be shattered. I took a slow breath and looked at her, letting the words sink fully into my awareness. Divorce ultimatum, a friend she had chosen to insert into our lives, as if I would have no choice in the matter. The audacity of it made my chest tighten, yet I remained still, calm, and unyielding. My hand reached for the pen with deliberate slowness, the motion carefully measured, each second stretching the tension between us. She expected shock, anger, perhaps tears. She expected me to protest, to argue, to react in fear or desperation. Instead, I signed the papers without a word, letting my silence speak volumes. The shock in her eyes was immediate, the certainty she had relied on beginning to crumble. Her initial reaction was a mixture of disbelief and panic. Her confident smile, the one she had worn like armor, faltered. And for the first time that day, she looked vulnerable. "Wait, you misunderstood?" She stammered, voice tight, trembling slightly at the edges. I didn't respond, didn't even look up from the papers. My silence was deliberate, allowing the room to grow heavy with tension, each second amplifying her realization. She had counted on me to react predictably, to plead, to negotiate. But her assumptions had been entirely wrong. She was learning painfully and viscerally that control could not be forced through manipulation. She leaned forward instinctively, hands hovering as if to snatch the papers back, to reclaim the situation, to somehow undo the damage she had caused. But I didn't move. I let her feel the weight of her own choices fully, letting her understand that there was no rewind, no loophole, no back door to circumvent the consequences she had provoked. Her heartbeat, quickening in panic, was almost audible. Her mind raced, scrambling to explain, to rationalize, to twist reality in her favor. But it was too late. Some decisions, once faced with unwavering resolve, cannot be reversed, and some lessons once delivered leave permanent marks. Her voice cracked slightly as she attempted to recover to explain away her audacity. Yet every syllable sounded hollow. "I didn't mean it's not like that," she faltered, realizing the futility of her words. I remained calm, letting my stillness assert authority and control. She had tried to manipulate me, to force a compromise that suited her, to twist our lives according to her whims, and I had refused. My calm defiance, my refusal to take the bait, became a silent weapon far more effective than confrontation or yelling ever could have been. Time stretched as she sank into the nearest chair, her hands clasped tensely in her lap, her breathing uneven and shallow. She looked at me, searching for reassurance, for any sign that her mistake could be undone. But I gave none. I let her wrestle with the stark reality of her miscalculation, letting the lessons sink in fully and unflinchingly. The smile that had once radiated control and arrogance had vanished, replaced by an unfamiliar vulnerability that made her almost fragile in appearance. She had gambled, and the stakes had crushed her illusion of power. Finally, I spoke, my voice low, calm, and deliberate, letting the words hang like a quiet hammer over her fragile certainty. "Actions have consequences. Choices have weight. You thought you could dictate terms, but the reality is you misjudged both me and the situation. What you try to force into our lives is irrelevant now." Her face palled, eyes wide with a dawning realization that her manipulation had failed spectacularly. She understood finally that trying to control someone who refuses to play by your rules only exposes your own vulnerability. She tried once more, a whisper, fragile and desperate. I didn't think you'd," but the words trailed into the heavy silence that had settled between us. She had counted on my compliance, my willingness to bend to her whims, and had been confident that she would win. Instead, she discovered that patience, observation, and quiet determination could dismantle even the boldest assumptions. Fear, tempered by realization, had replaced arrogance, and her entire world felt suddenly precarious. I rose from my chair slowly, every movement deliberate, a quiet authority radiating from my posture. The papers lay between us, the symbol of her misjudgment and the consequences she had invoked. "You made your choice. I made mine," I said softly, letting the weight of those words settle on her like a shadow. Her eyes darted to the table, then to mine, and she understood fully that the power she had assumed she wielded was gone. She had miscalculated, and now she faced the reality of her own decisions. By the time I walked away, her expression had changed completely. The smile, once confident and teasing, had vanished entirely, replaced by stark awareness and the lingering tremor of panic. She had tried to force a narrative that suited her desires, underestimated my calm, and assumed she could manipulate outcomes. Now she knew, in a way she would never forget, that quiet strength, patient observation, and unflinching resolve are far more powerful than arrogance, charm, or ultimatum. That day, she learned a lesson she could not unlearn. Some mistakes cannot be erased, and some lessons leave a mark that lingers far longer than words ever.